Добрый день, уважаемые слушатели, уважаемые коллеги. Меня зовут Полина Бояркина, я сотрудник Института русской литературы, и мы продолжаем наши набоковские чтения. Сегодня уже четвертый, предпоследний день нашей конференции, и я невероятно рада анонсировать нашу сегодняшнюю встречу с биографом Владимира Набокова Брайаном Бойдом. Перед тем, как мы приступим, собственно, к встрече, я бы хотела выразить благодарность партнерам нашей конференции, которые поддерживают нас информационно. Это порталы Афиша.ру, Культура.рф, которые помогают нам с трансляцией, и петербургским книжным магазинам «Порядок слов», «Все свободны», подписные издания и «Во весь голос», которые на дни нашей конференции предоставляют скидки на книги Набокова и о Набокове. И для начала нашей сегодняшней встречи я передаю слово Татьяне Пономаревой.
Не слышно? Теперь меня слышно, да? Вот. Я очень кратко, потому что Брайан настолько известен, что, я думаю, как бы от меня вы не услышите много нового. Конечно, да, Брайан прежде всего известен как биограф, как автор замечательной, просто совершенно удивительной, конечно, работы, двухтомной биографии Набокова, которую я всем, кто не читал и кто интересуется Набоковым, очень рекомендую прочитать, потому что это единственная биография, которая полностью документирована. Это ей можно доверять во всем, поэтому это, кроме того, она просто очень интересно написана, поэтому всем советую прочитать. Но, конечно, считать Брайана только биографом тоже не точно, потому что он автор замечательных исследований, литературоведческих исследований о романе «Ада», и о романе «Бледный огонь», и о других текстах Набокова, поэтому тоже всем, кто этим интересуется, очень советую прочитать, тем более, что по-русски две его работы крупные, «Ада», и об Аде, и о «Бледном огне» вышли, поэтому их можно прочитать и в переводе. Брайан всегда был нашим другом, товарищем, всегда нам во всем помогал. Мы очень рады, что и сейчас он с нами, и сегодня мы можем послушать его рассказ и задать ему вопросы, что тоже, конечно, это удивительная возможность для всех что-то спросить. Поэтому все, я передаю слово Брайану Бойду.
Okay. It's a great pleasure to be back, even virtually, in Russia, in the Nabokov reading series, and to be introducing more Nabokov to read, essays, reviews, interviews, and more, to those who can't read enough of them, even if there is a lot already available. Here's a list of other books by Nabokov at the front of Think, Write, Speak. I suspect that for many Anglophone Nabokovians, some of their favorite passages or their favorite insights into Nabokov come from Strong Opinions, his 1973 collection of essays, reviews, and interviews. Strong Opinions has a particularly special place in my heart. It became available in New Zealand in 1974, just after I'd finished my MA thesis on what were then Nabokov's latest three novels, Pale Fire, Ada, and Transparent Things. When I opened Strong Opinions, I saw a previously unpublished 1972 interview where Nabokov seemed almost embarrassed that nobody had solved the riddle at the center of his most recent novel, Transparent Things, that the narrator was the ghost of the novelist Mr. R within the story. In my thesis, I'd solved that riddle using the same clues Nabokov highlighted in his interview. So I sent him a copy of my MA thesis with return postage paid for, just to show that his challenge could be figured out. Vera wrote back, reporting her husband's appreciative comments, and also sending the thesis with his pencil marks in the margins where I'd made a mistake. No! With an exclamation mark and the correct answer. I'd written the thesis in 6 weeks when I was 21, so it wasn't as good as it might have been. I thought after the MA thesis was finished that I was done with Nabokov, as if. At the University of Toronto, I started a PhD thesis on the American novelist John Barth, but I was getting bored when by chance I discovered a new and more resonant answer to a little riddle on the first page of Ada that I hadn't dreamed could have a deeper and much more valuable solution. I picked up Ada again at 24, and it started exploding with new life, line by line. So I switched to Nabokov and Ada for my dissertation and never regretted it for a second. I suspect I couldn't have got where I did in the dissertation, distilled into my first book, Nabokov's Ada, The Place of Consciousness, if I hadn't known one of my favorite passages from Strong Opinions. Reality is a very subjective affair. I can only define it as a kind of gradual accumulation of information and as specialization. If we take a lily, for instance, or any other kind of natural object, a lily is more real to a naturalist than it is to an ordinary person, but it is still more real to a botanist. And yet another stage of reality is reached with that botanist who's a specialist in lilies. You can get nearer and nearer, so to speak, to reality, but you can never get near enough because reality is an infinite succession of steps, levels of perception, false bottoms, and hence unquenchable, unattainable. You can know more and more about one thing, but you can never know everything about even one thing. It's hopeless. That passage was essential to my understanding Nabokov's epistemology and his metaphysics. I couldn't have summed up Nabokov's philosophy as I did in my dissertation without this, and without it, I wouldn't have been so motivated to solve Ada's hidden challenges, or 20 years later, to write my book on Pale Fire. And precisely because I knew the interviews in Nabokov could offer such rich clues, I began, as soon as I switched to Nabokov for my dissertation, to order interlibrary loans through the University of Toronto Library for anything by Nabokov I didn't have. I even filled out an interlibrary loan for Nabokov's first book, Stichi 1916, knowing that there was only one copy known in the Americas, which had just been sold to a private collector for 10,000 American dollars, almost 50,000 in today's dollars. I didn't expect to get it, but to my great surprise, a few months later, a copy from the Lenin Library arrived through interlibrary loan with instructions that it must not be photocopied. What did I immediately do? Yes, I photocopied it. All, taking great care, of course, not to harm the pages. But most of what I ordered on interlibrary loan were interviews, essays, and reviews, some from Ruhl, some from the New York Sun. I was repeatedly dazzled by what turned up. The grainy photocopies, sometimes from microfilm negatives, allowed me to see writer and man from new angles and with a new clarity. Other material I could find in the university library without resorting to interlibrary loans, like all the reviews for the New Republic in Nabokov's first year in the US. Fortunately, Andrew Field's Nabokov, a bibliography, was available to guide me what to ask for. But despite Vera Nabokov's helping Dieter Zimmer to compile the first published Nabokov bibliography in 1963, and then Vera's and her husband's helping Field to compile his expanded version, Field's bibliography, like all his work, was full of errors and omissions, some of which I could fix by consulting general annual periodical bibliographies. Here's what my copy of the Field bibliography looks like from outside after all my wrestling with it to make it adequate. There's some tape over what was the spine in a vain attempt to try to hold it in place for a little longer. And here's the interviews section. Trying to find out everything that Nabokov had published himself or said to interviewers was invaluable in understanding his ideas. Another favourite passage from those early searches was from his 1940 review for the New York Sun of a book by a philosopher not widely known outside his New York base. Nabokov writes of the old pitfall of that dualism which separates the ego from the non-ego, a split which, strangely enough, is intensified the stronger the reality of the world is stressed. The human mind is a box with no tangible lid, sides, or bottom, and still it is a box, and there is no earthly method of getting out of it and remaining in it at the same time. I had to quote that too in my analysis of Nabokov's epistemology and metaphysics. I sent the first part of my dissertation with the general discussion of Nabokov's style and thought and their relationship to Karl Proffer, a Nabokov scholar himself, the founding editor of Russian Literature Tri-Quarterly and the founder of Ardis Press, which published in America Russian material, including Soviet dissidents and reprints of Nabokov's émigré Russian books. Proffer sent the chapters on to Vera Nabokova, and he reported to me that she liked them, so I sent her the whole thing in 1979. Just before I had to return to New Zealand, she wrote asking me to visit her in Montreux. So I quickly rerouted myself the long way back. I would arrive in New Zealand with only $5 in my pocket and no credit card. I spent 4 days with Vera in Montreux. This place, although without the garden gnome at the front, that face. Grilling her for the bibliography I was planning to write, to correct Field's, and to sneak in by the back door the facts that Field's biography of Nabokov only muddled or ignored. 2 months after I reached Auckland, where I was working on a postdoc on New Zealand literature, I received a letter from Vera inviting me to catalogue her husband's archives for her. Of course, I said yes, and catalogued the archive for her over the New Zealand summers or Swiss winters of 1979-1980 and 1980-81. This is Nabokov's comically detailed diagram of their floor in the Montreux Palace for his sister Yelena when she was coming to stay while he was away. Lake Geneva is at the bottom of the image, the hills behind Montreux at the top. That's where Vera would usually sit to give me instructions or to hear my endless questions. That's where I would usually sit. In the course of cataloguing the archives, I came across much unpublished material, including Russian essays and reviews, and even some major material that had been lost, like the typescript of Volshebnik, published in translation in the mid-1980s. I found it just here in the Montreux Palace, in room 69, in a pile behind the desk. Might be hidden behind my image if it's in the top right. And the lectures on Russian literature, other than the novels and stories, on Pushkin, Griboyev, Lermontov, Chuchev, Fet, Bloch, and much else. I found them in the same room in a box behind a cupboard. And those lectures, Stanislas Schwabren and I will soon be preparing for publication. After finding them, I transferred them to what I'd set up as the archive room by the left-hand arrow in an old linen room. In 1980, Vera Nabokov had also reluctantly given me access to the Nabokov archives at the Library of Congress, where I discovered several corrected typescripts of unpublished English language reviews. In 1981, a fellowship allowed me to start not just a bibliography, but a biography of Nabokov. Returning to Montreux, I pored not only through Nabokov's manuscripts and his correspondence, but also through the albums and folders of clippings that Vera had been compiling since 1923, lately with the help of her secretary. And there too, I found more interviews. I found still more when I traveled to the US and researched in the archives of Wellesley College. When I did eventually publish the Nabokov biography, I used as an epigraph to the first volume a quotation from one of the interviews I discovered, listed in a periodical bibliography and been able to order through Toronto's interlibrary loan service. It sums up quite magically and beguilingly Nabokov's epistemology and metaphysics, or if you like, his sense of the wonder of life, and it set the tone for the whole biography. Interviewer: what surprises you in life? Nabokov: the marvel of consciousness, that sudden window swinging open on a sunlit landscape amidst the night of non-being. Isn't that superb? This interview had been published in 1974, and yet no Nabokov scholar had cited it. And it was the same for almost everything in his essays and reviews and interviews that had not been collected in Strong Opinions. By and large, even good scholars didn't search out this material, despite its offering new glimpses of Nabokov's ideas and attitudes and personality and memories and judgments. Almost as soon as I started gathering this material in 1976, as I was beginning on my dissertation, and all the more urgently from 1979 and 1980 as I began to work in the Montreux and Library of Congress archives, I felt the need for a successor to Strong Opinions. But I always had new projects demanding attention. After the biography was published, The Russian Years in 1990, The American Years in 1991, and after I'd corrected their French and Russian translations, I started a book on Shakespeare and was reorganizing my study to move on past Nabokov, as if, again, when I came across all my files for my dissertation on Ada. I decided I should spare anybody else having to work so hard in that inexhaustible garden of unearthly delights. So I started publishing annotations to Ada, piecemeal, a chapter at a time in 1993, and then in 2004 began also to put the material up on the internet, hyperlinked as Ada Online. I'm up to chapter 45 out of 69 now, with about 1,500 pages written, so I expect about 2,500 pages in all. I edited Nabokov's English language fiction for the Library of America in 1996, and I found myself embroiled in a project of editing Nabokov's butterfly writings with lepidopterist and nature writer Robert Michael Pyle, which came out in 1999, and in a controversy with other Nabokovians about pale fire, which led to my changing my ideas about the novel completely and writing the book on pale fire I published in 1999. I also wrote this in 6 weeks, but this time I don't think Nabokov would have had to put crosses in the margin, I hope. By then, I was already working on a biography of the philosopher Karl Popper. That day skiing, in New Zealand this is, might have been the one day in his life he didn't work all day. Here are a couple of his early books, unlike all the later ones written in German. So by then I was already working on a biography of philosopher Karl Popper and starting to think about literature and evolution when I got embroiled in co-editing with Stas Schwabrin Nabokov's translations of Russian poetry, published as Verses and Versions in 2008. I'd known since 1979 that this was a project dear to Vera's heart, so I'd been collecting material for it ever since. I was also co-editing and co-translating Nabokov's letters to his wife, with Olga Voronina doing most of the work. That published in 2014. A couple of years before Letters to Vera was ready, the agent for the Nabokov estate, Andrew Wiley, had asked me to offer advice on a proposal he had been sent. Anastasia Tolstoy was writing an Oxford D.Phil dissertation on disgust in Nabokov, especially in King, Queen, Knave. She proposed compiling and translating some of his uncollected essays and reviews from the decade of that novel, the 1920s. Much the same way as it happened with the books on Nabokov's butterflies and on his verse translations, I had to say that I'd been collecting this kind of material since the 1970s, and that it would be better to publish a comprehensive volume of the Nabokov essays and reviews and interviews that hadn't been collected for Strong Opinions, and that Anastasia and I should work together on this. Andrew Wiley and Anastasia quickly agreed. So at last there was a prompt to start assembling this book that I'd been thinking about for almost 4 decades. And a name for the volume came immediately. One of Nabokov's most arresting and provocative opening lines is in his foreword to Strong Opinions. I think like a genius, I write like a distinguished author, and I speak like a child. To honor that predecessor volume and to emphasize Nabokov's unusual way of writing his interviews before he spoke them, I knew at once that we should call it Think, Write, Speak. Little did I know how brilliantly the designer Chip Kidd would use the title in his cover for the book. Even though I'd been assembling for decades the materials that would feed into this book, actually compiling it, locating and cross-checking the manuscript and typescript and published versions, and making sure that nothing was left out of consideration, even if it wasn't ultimately used, took much more into library loan work. I also consulted Maurice Couturier, the leading French Nabokovian, who knew of a couple of French interviews I'd somehow missed, and especially Dieter Zimmer, the leading German Nabokovian for almost 60 years, who'd compiled a follow-up volume to the German Strong Opinions, Eigensinnige Ansichten, not as comprehensive or as ambitious as ours, but with some material that had escaped my notice. I have to stop here and digress. When I wrote this talk a week ago, I thought Dieter was still alive. In fact, he had died at 85 a week earlier, but I found out this only this Wednesday. And since then, I've written an obituary and a letter to his widow and translated his 1959 review of the German Lolita, which Nabokov thought the best thing yet written on the novel. To an audience of Nabokov's, I just have to honor him, have to quote from the start and finish of my obituary. Dieter E. Zimmer, essayist, editor, translator, an intellectually incorruptible Renaissance man, I quote from the German Wikipedia, and among much else, Nabokov's most important translator, editor, and longest-serving scholar, has died. And now to the end of the obituary. Despite his high achievements as a Nabokovian and as a German writer, editor, and public intellectual, Dieter remained in person modest, even diffident, shy, reserved. He wrote to Nabokov of a certain natural inhibition. He might seek out a table by himself at a writers' and readers' function until others sought him out. Or it might remain uncertain until the last minute whether he would even turn up to a banquet where he was all but the guest of honor. He made it difficult to tell him how much he was admired for his integrity, his intelligence and discernment, his unflagging curiosity, meticulousness, tenacity, energy, and thoughtful generosity. He will be missed. He will be remembered and treasured, and his work will live on. Back to Think, Write, Speak. Because we were publishing for a non-Russian audience, we didn't include every Russian review Nabokov wrote, especially reviews of poets now forgotten, reviews that tended to criticize the poets for linguistic or prosodic shortcomings that would have been meaningless to Anglophones. But we have included reviews of Bunin, Horosevich, and Poplavsky, and among prose writers of Remezov, Kuprin, and Beberva. These have appeared, of course, in the symposium Sobrania Sochenini. But we've also published essays that have been published in Russian but not collected, like On Generalities, Несколько слов об обязательствах советской беллетристки и попытки установить причины этого, and Человек и вещи, which have been published in Russian periodicals since the 1990s but not collected. I also selected a couple of pieces that have not been previously published at all. A 1924 excerpt from a draft review of some young poets with revealing comments on Mandelstam, Nabokov's most extensive discussion of Mandelstam, until or even including his 1969 attack on Robert Lowell's so-called adaptations of Mandelstam, and a curious brief essay of 1928, Aboporie. But most of the volume consists of material that has been published but never collected, certainly not in English, nor in Nabokov or Nabokovye и прочем. Essays and reviews in English, Russian, and French, 100 interviews in English, Russian, French, German, and Italian. One of the few defects of strong opinions was the repetition from interview to interview, because different interviewers so often asked the same questions. How did he write? What was his daily routine? Why did he write Lolita? Why Switzerland? What language did he think in? So instead of presenting interviews intact, I eliminated as much as I could the reporters added to their interviews, and as much as I could that had already been expressed by Nabokov elsewhere. In Strong Opinions, Nabokov used almost exclusively his own written answers to interviewers' written questions. But on one occasion, he did use a few impromptu answers that had been recorded on film for a documentary. I too used mainly Nabokov's written and revised words from his own manuscripts or typescripts, but occasionally I would also add an impromptu oral exchange or two that the interviewer had recorded. A 1974 review by Gerald Clark ends in the prepared part. If you had had a choice, what language would you have preferred to have been born with? Russian. But I couldn't resist selecting a little more from Clark's report of the interview. He offered me a drink, a gin and tonic perhaps, and professed amazement, shock, and incomprehension when I wanted instead a local Swiss beer, the agreeable but slightly acidic Feldschlösschen. Feldschlösschen is for field mice. Try a German beer. Maybe he likes light beer, Vera gently suggested. It's not a question of light or dark, it's a question of good or bad. A little later, Clark asked him, if you ever go back to America, where will you live? California. California is one of my favorite states. I like the climate, the flora, and the fauna, the butterfly fauna. And it's close to Mexico and Alaska. I've never been to Alaska, unfortunately. It's the best place for butterflies. Which part of California would you go to? I like it all. I love Los Angeles, where we lived while I was writing the screenplay of Lolita. I'd never seen jacaranda trees before, at least in bloom. Do you remember, darling? There was a whole street lined with jacarandas. Nabokov made wonderful word masks for his characters. Herman, Fyodor, Humbert, Kinbote, Shade, Van Veen. I mentioned the famous opening sentence of the foreword to Strong Opinions. In the famous opening sentence of the afterword to Lolita, Nabokov writes, after doing my impersonation of suave John Ray, the character in Lolita who pens the foreword, any comments coming straight from me may strike me, in fact, as an impersonation of Vladimir Nabokov, talking about his own book. The interviews offer a chance to see Nabokov without a mask, or at least with lighter, flimsier masks, prepared for specific audiences and moments. We all adjust what we say and how we say to different company and different occasions. And it's fascinating to see what someone with Nabokov's range of linguistic resources can find to say for new audiences, Wellesley College staff and students, the readers of Novaya Ruskaya Slovo, Playboy or Vogue, or the viewers of Bernard Pivot's wildly popular live French TV program, Apostrophe. Sometimes he seems to forget about playing for an audience and just engages spontaneously with an interviewer. Then would Lolita be above all a satire? Not at all. It's a very tender book, an American map of tenderness, an America of my own, imaginary, a maquette. Is Lolita amoral? On the contrary, there's a very moral, don't harm children. Now, Humbert does. We might defend his feelings for Lolita, but not his perversity. Sounds like the church. In this, nature is on the church's side. And Lolita, isn't she a victim and not a little slattern? After all, haven't I indicated the evil of all this in giving Lolita a stillborn child? But the ending shows a purer Humbert, doesn't it? The good reader should have a little smarting at the corner of his eye when Humbert gives money to his Lolita, mature and with another. Pornography. Have you read the Marquis de Sade? The orgies? Things start with one person, then 5, then 50, then they invite the gardener. Enormous laugh. There's your pornography, quantity without quality. It's banal, it's not literature. The intention of art is always pure, always moral. I hate the Marquis de Sade. And in one remarkable interview, which I had to translate from the Italian published version because there's no manuscript, Nabokov engages in a real debate with an interviewer, the anti-fascist writer Alberto Ongaro. Ongaro wanted to argue that a new kind of sexuality had emerged in the 1960s. Nabokov, who was writing Ada and allowing himself a new sexual frankness because the decade allowed it, would have none of it. Do you think that a love like that of Humbert and Lolita is still possible? A total abandonment to feeling? Humbert is a villain, and his case is no model. But if by this question you want to know if I believe people still fall in love, and in the same way as before, I will answer yes. You see, I've taught for a long time in universities. I know young people well. I've seen couples who loved each other, couples who broke up painfully, others who broke up painlessly. As always. The young people I've known were no different in love from the way I was, nor from how young people are today or will be like tomorrow. Love and sex, I repeat, are always the same. Isn't it risky to say this? If man does not change now, how could he evolve? And it's not far from saying that man is always the same, regardless of historical context. I do not believe that man exists, but men. And men are different from each other and the same in the essential elements that persist through time. And love is an essential element. Certainly, there can be social, moral evolution, but not in love or in the feelings that can be always the same, the joys or sorrows that love can give. Another interviewer who exasperated Nabokov by asking again almost only questions that had already been asked in Strong Opinions, when he had asked her to read Strong Opinions and asked different questions, asked him one final question. The man, Vladimir Nabokov, and the writer, V.N., do not have to harmonize, but they must have something to do with each other. Why do you separate the man and the writer so strongly? And the Nabokov who'd started off Strong Opinions by declaring, "I think like a genius," answered, "I, the man, am a deeply moral, exquisitely kind, old-fashioned, and rather stupid person. I, the writer, am different in every respect. It's the writer who answers your last and best question." Think, Write, Speak offers us much more of Nabokov and many more Nabokovs. Thank you for listening.
Dear Brian, thank you very much.
Okay, shall I stop sharing the, if I do that, is that?
Yeah, excellent.
The right thing?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Tatiana Olegovna, can you please switch on the microphone?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm still not good enough with Zoom. Thank you very much, Brian. And how do we arrange that, Polina? Do we now take questions from the from our colleagues here, or from the audience, the one that came by?
Yeah, while I will send the questions that were sent by Google Form, we can ask our colleagues. I also already received a message from Grigory. Grigory, maybe you can start asking questions.
И, наверное, мы еще все-таки должны на русском тоже, потому что нас слушают, конечно, много людей, которые по-английски, может быть, слушать трудно. Хорошо, пожалуйста. So maybe, Grigory, if maybe you, I don't know, if you, would you like to ask your question in English or in Russian? Where is Grigory?
Okay, will it be okay if I ask my question in English?
It'll be okay for me.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I can ask in English and then translate my question in Russian so we could have a wider audience. My question is quite provocative and spontaneous. It is provocative because it is spontaneous. And the question concerns an essay that has been recently published in Think, Write, Speak on poetry. As far as I'm concerned, you and Anastasia decided to shorten this text and omit the part concerning Ilya Britain and the part concerning the future Archbishop of San Francisco. Yeah, so what remained was perhaps the most interesting part of that review concerning Mandelstam, as you mentioned. It's really valuable piece of writing, and for the Russian audience, it's been available since the year 2000.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was included in Alexander Dolinin's early short annotations to Dar, to the gift. Yeah, and for the English-speaking audience, it became available just in 2019. But there is one thing that surprised me a little bit. Yeah, it's not that your decision to shorten and to give just a small passage of it, but the fact that you mentioned in your annotation that this piece of writing is apparently unpublished. Was it just an accident, or was it, or did you mean that it was unpublished in English?
I had thought it was unpublished. No, it was my mistake. Yes, it's very hard to follow what gets published in Russian from here, and I'm not a Slavist.
Yeah.
And basically, I haven't been working on Nabokov most of the time since 1990. So even though I've published
quite... It's a good idea if I send you this volume, so because it contains the publication of the whole essay with comprehensive commentary concerning both the biography of Lev Gardon, whose life was really terrifying because, you know, he was arrested several times and he was kept in the same Gulag prison as Yuri Dombrovsky. Yeah, so, and he was a very fine poet, and it's really good for us that Nabokov wrote that review on his collection of poems Ottipel, because it is thanks to Nabokov that we know Lev Gardon, who was a very fine poet, but absolutely almost unknown. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, by all means, send it to me. Anything else you think I might have missed?
Okay, I'll ask our colleagues from Pushkinsky Dom whether to send it to your Auckland University address or to your home address. Okay, but we can arrange that. Thank you. Thank you. Tatiana, should I translate my question into Russian or give just a brief summary of it?
Tatiana Olegana, don't forget to switch on your microphone.
Yes, Grigory, yes, please translate your own, or maybe you can translate Brian's answer, to compress it, yes, to make it shorter.
Professor Boyd, I shall make a small review. Sure. Мой вопрос касался текста, который по-русски был впервые опубликован в 2000 году в составе Набоковского пятитомника «Собрание сочинений русского периода в 5 томах». Это был комментарий к роману «Дар» Александра Долинина. Это текст, ранний текст, неопубликованной рецензии под названием «О поэзии», где Набоков пишет о Мандельштаме. И это самый ранний известный нам отзыв о Мандельштаме. И мой вопрос касался вот такого не столько филологического вопроса, сколько вопроса того, как печатать непечатаемый текст. Я спросил у профессора Бойда, по случайности ли в комментарии к Think, Write, Speak написано, что, скорее всего, этот текст не опубликован, и профессор Бойд ответил, что он, собственно, не занимается Набоковым так интенсивно, как он занимался когда-то, и вот просто не уследил. Я обещал прислать ему опубликованный текст рецензии с комментарием.
Спасибо.
Спасибо. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, does any of you have some other questions? Есть ли у кого-нибудь еще вопросы? Прежде чем я передам Брайану вопросы, которые у нас были присланы заранее. Okay, Brian, would it be more comfortable for you if I read the questions, or I've sent the first two as a message for you, but they are now they look like one text.
Лена, а у Ольги Ворониной есть вопрос,
I
она
can see,
руку поднимает.
Unfortunately, I cannot see. Я, к сожалению, не вижу все окошки, поэтому я очень всячески вас призываю, если у вас есть какие-то вопросы, сигнализируйте мне, пожалуйста, в сообщениях. Ольга, пожалуйста, я приглашаю вас включить микрофон и задать ваш вопрос. Спасибо большое. Не можете включить? Окей, так. Сейчас мы попробуем.
Алина, у вас такой строгий контроль за голосом и речью, это просто удивительно. Hi, Brian. I have a question.
Hi.
I have a question about a book that I stumbled upon while I was working with your book, and it's Conversations with Vladimir Nabokov, edited by Robert Galla. And it was published in 2017, contains a lot of interviews I haven't seen before. I wonder whether you know about that book and what you can say about its existence. How does it compare to Think, Write, Speak?
Again, I know nothing about it. I'm surprised that I didn't stumble on it, and that I wasn't alerted to its existence by Andrew Wiley. So it has interviews that are missing from Think, Write, Speak. Or, I mean, we didn't reproduce everything because some of them didn't have enough new material, but.
I haven't done a thorough comparative analysis. I'll send you a link. You can take a look at all the titles. I just wondered what was going on because it's a book I haven't seen. It is a book that was published in 2017, and it is positioned as a new collection of interviews. The author's name is Galla, G-O-L-L-E. We'll leave it there. I can summarize for our colleagues in Russian, if you allow me. Я спросила Брайана о том, что он думает о книге Роберта Голлы, которая была недавно издана в 2017 году. Называется «Разговоры с Владимиром Набоковым». По-видимому, содержит некие интервью, которые тоже считаются неопубликованными. Но так как Брайан говорит, что он об этой книге не знал, то нужно совершить некий текстологический анализ для того, чтобы понять, где что пересекается и как эти две книги можно сопоставить.
Большое. Okay.
I hope the next question isn't about something else I've missed.
Okay, dear colleagues, anyone else maybe would like to ask any questions? No. Okay, so we go to the questions that were sent to us before our meeting. Мы переходим к вопросам, которые нам прислали до нашей встречи. Brian, would you like me to read them, or you will be more comfortable if you read them by yourself?
It's probably, I've got two computers here and I don't know where to put my fingers, so probably easier if you read the questions.
Okay. So I will start. The first question is some of people who sent us questions, they signed, but some of them didn't. So if there is a name, I will read it. But if there is no, unfortunately, that will be an anonymous questions. К сожалению, не все приславшие нам подписали вопросы, поэтому если имя автора, задавшего вопрос, не указано, то я, к сожалению, не смогу его назвать. Okay, so the question from Kirill Ozerny is, Dear Mr. Boyd, I would like to ask a question about how you see the correlation of game and play modes in the art of Vladimir Nabokov. Books like Pale Fire or Lolita are often given as examples of game narratives in contemporary works on ludology, but not much is said about how play, wordplay, postmodern play or of narratives and discourses transforms into game as a system of rules and perhaps possibility of failure. Would you comment on that?
Okay, you can send me more questions, Paulina, because I have found out how to see them. And it's just as well I have, because it's quite a long question. In my first book on Nabokov, I used the analogy saying that every novel, certainly every novel by Nabokov, is a different kind of game with its own rules. But generally, I don't see. I mean, it is true that a game does have defined rules, and play doesn't necessarily. I see them as being very much on a continuum, game and play. And in terms of the part of the question that asks about game as involving possibly a possibility of failure, I don't think that's really a part of Nabokov's games. It is possible that you might not get all the way to the end point of the board game, say, but you'll enjoy yourself on the way around. It's not a question of failure. It's a question of perhaps less complete success. It is possible, of course, to misconstrue a novel entirely, but that's the same whether it's a play kind of novel, a game kind of novel, or not. Here's my answer. I've lost your sound, Paulina.
Sorry. It's I just forgot to switch it on. Okay, thank you very much. Tatiana Olegovna, can you please help us with the translation?
Sorry, Tanya, I forgot to pause and to go more slowly.
Yes, actually, I think most people who are listening to us, they understand you, but the question, на вопрос, значит, я думаю, да, что большинство, наверное, те, кто нас слушает, даже, мне кажется, понимают, но вопрос был о игровых, то, что принято называть игровые стратегии в романах Набокова, и здесь как бы заложена ли необходимость неудачного решения загадки, да, наверное, вот так это можно перевести, заранее в набоковской писательской стратегии. Но Брайан отвечает, что, как он считает, в каждом романе они разные, здесь нет какой-то единой системы, да, насколько, если я правильно, да, понимаю вас, наверное, это так. Нет единой системы, нельзя говорить о каком-то одном подходе Набокова, едином для всех его романов. Он в каждом случае, в каждом романе он разный, и вряд ли можно говорить о том, что, так сказать, неудача в разрешении, неудача в разгадке, она заложена изначально Набоковым в его текст. Да? Так, наверное. Можно.
Thank you very much. And Brian, I've sent you the next question. You can see it. I hope you can see it.
That's from yeah, from you. Okay. Do you think Nabokov as grandmaster of visual literary style will be relevant to the hypervisual world of 21st century? Well, Nabokov had an astonishing visual imagination, but what he liked, I think, was the fluidity of individual imaginations in visualizing from the verbal triggers he places in the text. He didn't like the idea of, let's see, I think it was Jacob Bronowski in Think, Write, Speak asks him about the possibility of the literature of the future being all film rather than novels. And for him, that was anathema. Perhaps I can get you to answer, to translate this bit, Tanya. Sound.
Так что вопрос от нашего слушателя был такой: считаете ли вы, что Набоков как мастер визуального литературного стиля, визуальности в литературе, как он, что его стиль особенно релевантен в гипервизуальном мире 21 века? И ответ Брайана, что да, Набоков очень ценил визуальное воображение. Но для него очень была важна то, что Брайан говорит, текучесть именно индивидуального воображения, которое вызывается некими вербальными триггерами в тексте. То есть, скажем, идея о том, что вся литература будущего – это уже не текст, а фильм, для Набокова была бы анафемой, она для него была бы совершенно неприемлема. Yes, I think I've done the first part, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. I was just looking and Think, Write, Speak to see if I could hit on the passage, but I couldn't. I think Nabokov's novels will, precisely because of the precision of their visual imagination and because of their fantastic qualities. I'm thinking of, say, Fyodor's imagining of his father's trips through Central Asia, or Kinbote's Zembla, or Ada's Anti-Terror. It will offer extraordinary possibilities for filmic realization or realization in other forms, perhaps video games, which I know nothing about, but I gather they're important to a lot of people. So, yeah, I think I certainly fantasize about, say, making a film of pale fire with multiple screens, or a TV series or a Netflix series nowadays of Ada in 20 episodes or 69 episodes or whatever. Yeah, I think he will offer great possibilities for visual realization in that way.
Я считаю, что, конечно, Набоков дает огромные возможности для визуализации его текстов, для адаптации в кино или, может быть, даже в видеоиграх в будущем, скажем, потому что его герои, конечно, обладают исключительным визуальным воображением. Скажем, можно вспомнить Федора, который полностью воображает путешествие своего отца по Центральной Азии, или Кинбот, который полностью в своем воображении создает несуществующую страну Земблу или Землю. Или романе Ада, где герои воображают антитеру. Поэтому это очень хорошо может быть представлено в фильмах или в других визуальных искусствах. Конечно, я очень хотел бы, чтобы когда-нибудь поставили фильм «По бледному огню». Или, например, сериал по роману Ада, в котором было бы, например, 69 серий или что-то подобное. So we may take следующий вопрос, да? Можно we may take another.
Yeah, I already sent the next question.
Yeah.
Ручку, наверное, меня почему-то не пишет ручка. Could you please wait a second? My pen is not working. I'll just get another pen, okay?
Sorry about my mail coming through.
I'm back.
Okay, so the question is, could we imagine for a moment that Nabokov's Lolita would be published in August 2020? What the reaction would be like, in your opinion, due to the fact that we live in the epoch of Me Too and feminism? Well, there are a couple of different things I could say here. One is that a book that alludes to Lolita a lot, called My Dark Vanessa. I've forgotten the name of the author now, but it just came out a few months ago and it's got very high praise, is precisely about that theme. It deals with it in a way that's it's by the woman who was manipulated, if you like, into a sexual relationship with her English teacher when she was at high school. And she's reminiscing about 15 or 20 years later, and her relationship to her experience with him is much more ambiguous than you might expect in the modern era. So that's the first answer. You can go with that, Tanya.
Okay, thank you. Вопрос теперь такой: можно ли представить себе, что Набоковская Лолита опубликована в августе 2020 года? Почему-то в августе. Интересно, какая была бы реакция в наше время, когда мы живем в эпоху МИТУ и феминизма, какая могла быть реакция сейчас на такую книгу? И ответ такой: недавно как раз была опубликована книга, которая называется «Is it My Dark Vanessa?»
My Dark Vanessa, yes, by Elizabeth Kate Russell.
Окей. Значит, да, книга называется, роман называется «My Dark Vanessa», то есть моя темная Ванесса, писателя английского, да, английского писателя Элизабет Кейт Рассел.
Американская.
Американская писателя. Роман, эта история как бы отчасти похожая, да, в центре истории женщина, которая, когда она училась в старших классах школы, у нее была связь с учителем. И она вспоминает о ней через 50 лет после этого. И воспоминания ее нам говорят о том, что ее восприятие это довольно двусмысленно, не такое прямолинейное, как сейчас это обычно мы воспринимаем вот в нынешних, скажем, в тех общественных кампаниях, которые мы сейчас видим.
Okay, and the other part of the question, that the answer that came to mind immediately was that there is a book in preparation called Teaching Lolita in the Me Too era. And I was asked to contribute to it, but and was going to, but ran out of time, but I will be doing a forward to it. But that's focusing particularly on that question. My sense is that, as I say in the interview I did for Polka, that came up yesterday or today, not sure which in Russia, that Nabokov was 50 years ahead of his time, that he was talking about these things then, that readers in the past, especially male readers, even highly gifted literary readers like Lionel Trilling and Robertson Davies, read the novel with a sense of Me Too, with a sense of entitlement, that the entitlement that caused the Me Too crisis, with a sense of male entitlement, that they didn't read it as Nabokov was inviting good readers to do, from the point of view of Lolita as victim and not just Humbert as perpetrator.
Брат говорит о том, что сейчас как раз скоро выйдет книга, которая так и будет называться «Как изучать» или как со студентами изучать, то есть именно преподавать, как преподавать роман Лолита в эпоху МИТУ. И там как раз вот все это, как раз вот эта тема будет подробно рассматриваться. Но как Брайан ответил в вопросах сайта «Полка», которые, возможно, уже опубликованы, это действительно надо помнить о том, что в то время, когда роман вышел, действительно многие его читатели, в том числе очень искушенные читатели, хорошо образованные, сами литературные люди, скажем, Лайнел Триллинг, такой известный, да, американский критик того времени, воспринимали ее как раз именно таким образом, что вот понятно, что их отношение – это и было причиной нынешнего движения #MeToo. И, конечно, то есть это совершенно не то, чего ожидал Набоков. Он написал это не так, как вот эти читатели мужчины это прочли. Это именно чтение именно мужчин. Brian, can I add a few words to this?
Sure, sure.
Я просто 2 слова, если можно, добавлю, потому что я действительно 20 лет я общалась именно с читателями самыми разными. И это правда совершенно так. Действительно, к сожалению, к большому сожалению, должна сказать, хотя я совершенно не принадлежу к движению #MeToo, но должна сказать, что, к сожалению, действительно есть гендерный подход к чтению Лолиты. Да, это есть. Действительно, очень часто тоже от очень грамотных, умных, интеллектуальных читателей, мужчин, я слышала, что это роман о любви. Какая, собственно, где там любовь, кто кого там любит, это совершенно мне непонятно. Я этого не вижу. И большинство читателей женщин, читательниц женщин, причем совершенно даже не литературных, а просто прочитавших роман, тоже любви там не видят. Там есть обладание, там есть злоупотребление, рабство, но там никакой любви, конечно, на мой взгляд, нету. Извините, что я добавила свои, как говорится, теперь 5 копеек. So maybe, I don't know, maybe the next question then can come.
Okay. From which text would I recommend someone start reading Nabokov? And well, that depends on my sense of the person who's asking the question, and how highly literary they are. If they're very highly literary, I might suggest they tackle Pale Fire first. But if I'm not so sure of that, I would often recommend Защиту Лужина.
Вопрос, с какого романа лучше начинать читать Набокова? Ответ Брайана, я думаю, что, наверное, зависит от того, насколько подготовлен читатель, насколько он вообще хорошо знает литературу. Если это читатель, хорошо знающий литературу, то я бы, наверное, посоветовала начать с «Бледного огня». А если это читатель, который меньше знает, то, наверное, начать лучше с «Защиты Лужина». Yes, and then...
And what, in my opinion, is Ada about all this terror and anti-terror worlds and events? If it is a cryptography, what it is about? Well, I've spent about 2,000 pages saying about what Ada is about, so I can't really answer it now. It's about so much. It's about love, time, memory, reality, imagination, all these things. No, well, I don't think it's a cryptography, but it does have a lot of riddles, and the riddles do converge at a certain point. Read my book on Ada and some of my later essays, and you might, or look at Ada online, and you might get some answers. But yeah, look at Ada online, provided you have read the book thoroughly yourself.
Вопрос, о чем, по вашему мнению, роман Ада? Все эти терры, антитерры, это криптограмма или вообще что это такое? Ну, ответ правильно, что как отвечает Брайан, я написал целых 2000 страниц о романе Ада, поэтому ответить быстро в нескольких словах, конечно, невозможно. Это обо всем, это о времени, пространстве, о любви, обо всем. Поэтому, наверное, надо хорошо его прочитать, и потом уже и у каждого, наверное, будет все-таки свое восприятие этого романа. Yes, yes. Maybe we can take the next questions.
Okay, since the original of Laura was burned at auction, who now has the collection of original index cards? and will they ever be available to the public? Is it also that true that the original of Laura contains a half of 276 cards plus one, or is the 139th card only in the autographed manuscript? I don't quite understand those numbers, and I really don't know what has happened to the index cards. No, I presume they will find their way into a public repository someday. Somebody will donate enough money to buy it off the individual who bought them at an auction, and they will be available. But in fact, they're perfectly available in the published version in very, very closely reproduced form. So it's not a great worry. I really don't understand the question about the numbers there, but
excuse me, Brian. I think what the person who wrote the question, what he or she means is that there is obviously a suspicion that you only published half of the existing cards. I think that's what the person means. So if
I don't know where they would get that guess from. I think maybe they're talking about the recto and the verso sides of the cards, the two different sides of the cards, and we haven't published the back side of the cards. But I can say that I did discover an extra part of the novel that hasn't been published. It's only about 2,000 words, I think. It's very interesting. It's from an earlier stage of composition, I think, than most of the rest of what we have in the book.
Вопрос был о романе, ну, у нас он называется подлинник Лауры, да, по-моему? Нет, Лаура ее, нет, подлинник Лауры. Напомните, пожалуйста, если я почему-то не могу сейчас вспомнить The Original of Laura, но я не могу почему-то вспомнить. Как
ее оригинал, кажется.
Лаура ее оригинал, да. Лаура ее оригинал, да-да-да. Угу. Вопрос был о карточках, на которых написан был изначально роман Набоковым. Все ли карточки доступны публике? Что произошло с оригиналами карточек, с этой коллекцией, и действительно ли там напечатана только половина существующих карточек. Как Брайан говорит, он даже не вполне понимает этот вопрос. Что произошло с карточками, это известно. Карточки были куплены видимо, в частную коллекцию. Но, конечно, есть надежда, что когда-нибудь, может быть, возможно, они будут представлены, как бы будут выкуплены, и, может быть, они будут находиться в каком-то хранилище, где они будут доступны всем желающим, кто хочет с ними познакомиться. Что касается того, все ли были напечатаны, то, возможно, вопрос о том, что иногда не был напечатан оборотная сторона карточки, которая, понятно, что вся эта работа по публикации этого, ну, так сказать, не то что незаконченного, а практически, в общем, ну, как бы только, как мне кажется, на начальной фазе существовавшего романа, конечно, она была очень, очень сложна. И как говорит Брайан, он уже после этого, после того, как был опубликован, вот в том виде, в каком он опубликован этот роман, он нашел еще часть карточек, довольно большую часть. И она очень интересная. Похоже, что она была написана гораздо раньше вот той части, которая была позднее опубликована. Так что вот как бы пока на сегодняшний день вот ситуация такая с карточками.
Okay, shall I go to the next question?
Yes, I think so. The ending to this question was that, well, you found this that earlier part, and this is it. So we are at this stage.
Yeah. I think I have drawn it to the attention of Andrew Wiley, who's the agent for the Nabokov books, but it hasn't been published yet. Yeah. It's perhaps a little embarrassing that they went to such trouble to produce such a fine book of the original of Laura, and then there's more been found. So that might be why he's not rushing to publish more of it.
Конечно, ситуация получилась, может быть, даже немножко, какая-то немножко неудобная, потому что получилось, что публиковали ту часть, которая была найдена раньше, а после этого нашли вторую часть, которая как бы, может быть, даже более интересна. Но на сегодняшний день она не публикована. Всю эту находку и все эти как бы известия теперь есть, все эти новости, они есть у литературного агентства, которое обладает правами на тексты Набокова. Так что, возможно, это будет опубликовано, но пока нет.
So the next question is, can you please tell why in the first place did you choose Nabokov among other writers as a subject of your studies? Well, Nabokov was asked once, why did he choose butterflies? And he said, I didn't choose them, they chose me. And I feel that about Nabokov, he chose me. I mean, certainly once I read Pale Fire, I was just so exhilarated by it, had a sense of endless discoveries that he was preparing for me, and that has never stopped. And no other writer, I was very interested in James Joyce at one stage and did consider doing him for my PhD, but no other writer has that sense of endless discovery. The one other writer that I really want to continue working on, a literary writer, I'm working on the philosopher Karl Popper, but is Shakespeare, who is inexhaustible in a different kind of way.
Вопрос теперь был такой, скажите, пожалуйста, почему вообще выбрали Набокова как писателя, которого вы изучаете, как вашу область? И ответ Брайана, он вспоминает ответ Набокова на похожий вопрос, почему вы занимаетесь почему вы выбрали изучение бабочек? И Набоков ответил, это бабочки выбрали меня, а не я выбрал их. И примерно то же самое, как говорит Брайан, он чувствует по отношению к Набокову. Набоков – это бесконечное открытие, непрекращающееся, бесконечное открытие все нового и нового, и другого такого писателя, как говорит Брайан, он не знает, хотя он поначалу очень интересовался Джеймсом Джойсом и хотел изучать именно Джойса, но впоследствии все-таки Набоков оказался более интересным. Сейчас он занимается именно Набоковым, и второй писатель, именно писатель, которым он занимается, потому что кроме этого он занимается еще философом Карлом Поппером, но Поппер не писатель, а именно из писателей это только Шекспир, потому что только Шекспир, как и Набоков, служит источником постоянных открытий.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, what was your personal impression of Vera? I met her when she was 77, and she was quite deaf by then. I remember having to repeat the word butterflies to her, and she didn't catch it. She said paradise, and I had to say butterflies about 4 times. And it's a word that's not surprising in a Nabokovian context, and she still couldn't get it. So relationships were not easy. She could sometimes, when Dmitri was there, he would have to relay in his booming voice what I had said so that she could hear it. So there was that constraint. There was also the constraint that I always wanted out of her more information than she ever wanted to give me. And I was inexhaustible in my curiosity. And she was happy enough to talk about Nabokov as somebody apart from her, but anything that came closer to her, she clammed up completely. So there was that constraint too. But she was she was severe. She admitted herself that she was suspicious by nature, distrustful by nature, and she was not easy company. Let's say that. I mean, I can see her charm, her intelligence, her wit too, but it wasn't an easy relationship that we had.
Хорошо, вопрос был о Вере Набоковой. Вопрос был такой: какое ваше было личное впечатление о Вере? Вот ответ Брайана. Когда я впервые с ней познакомился, ей было 77 лет. Она была совершенно глуха, она ничего не слышала. Например, она не могла понять слово butterfly, бабочка, да? Ей казалось, что я говорю paradise или что-то похожее, да? То есть она не слышала даже таких слов, которые, естественно, возникали в набоковском контексте. Часто иногда, когда Дмитрий был рядом, он нам помогал, он просто помогал ей услышать, как бы объяснял, что я говорю. Второй сложностью нашего общения было то, что она ограничивала темы общения. Она всегда была готова говорить о Набокове, о его текстах, о его работе, но совершенно не хотела говорить о себе и не хотела очень многого открывать о себе. Вообще она была человеком, severe, да, таким строгим, да, наверное, можно сказать, таким жестковатым, строгим. Она сама признавала, что она по своей природе человек, часто всех подозревающий в чем-то, да, такой подозрительный по природе человек, который всех в чем-то подозревала. Я, можно, секунду вставлю, я просто помню, Брайан об этом писал уже, что Набоков был из тех людей, которые в других людях сначала видели хорошее, а потом плохое. А Вера наоборот, она сначала в людях видела плохое, а потом уже хорошее. Мне кажется, это очень такое точное тоже определение вот, типов людей. Поэтому она не была легким человеком в общении. С ней было очень интересно, она была очень умна, очень интересна, но общаться с ней было нелегко. Поэтому наше общение не было легким.
Okay, dear Brian, if it's not too exhausting for you now, we have one more question.
Okay. The question is, when I worked on Nabokov's biography, what episode impressed you the most? Well, in a way, it would have to be the killing of Nabokov's father, because Nabokov wrote a long memoir about that, which was so brilliant. It gets you into his mind the evening he finds out that news, and it's just so poignant. Well, what first came to mind actually when I saw that question was something else. It was something that didn't get in the biography that I found out only later. So, like the books I'm finding out about Think, Write, Speak, about Nabokov's interviews. So, why doesn't Tatiana translate what I've said so far, and I'll carry on with the rest.
Вопрос такой: когда вы работали над биографией Набокова, какой эпизод больше всего вас потряс, да, показал, больше всего произвел на вас впечатление? Ну, наверное, как отвечать? Наверное, это было убийство отца Набокова, Владимира Дмитриевича. То, как Набоков описал этот вечер, когда он узнал об убийстве по телефону, и как они ехали с матерью к месту убийства. Это есть, этот отрывок есть, то есть я просто сейчас обращаюсь уже от себя, есть в биографии Набокова, и по-русски тоже он есть, так что можете там прочитать, это действительно незабываемый текст. Набоков просто вот как бы очень просто описывает то, что тогда происходило. Но был еще один эпизод, о котором я узнал позже, когда уже, после того, как я закончила работу над биографией, и вот сейчас мы узнаем у Брайана, что это был за эпизод.
Okay, so this was something I found out in the 1990s when I was working with lepidopterists who I was working on Nabokov's butterflies, and lepidopterists were doing a lot of work in the butterfly taxa that Nabokov had specialized in South America. And it was Kurt Johnson, the lepidopterist, who put me in touch with his mentor, John Downey, who had been working as... So this was a little episode that revealed Nabokov's character, if you like, in a way. The episode with about his father's death revealed Nabokov's thoughts from the inside, if you like, but this revealed more about his character in general and the peculiarities of his character. So Nabokov was collecting butterflies, and this John Downey was working as a student, was working driving coal trucks up this mountain road, and he stopped to ask Nabokov what he was doing, and Nabokov said he was catching butterflies, and Downey said, "Well, I catch butterflies," and Nabokov thought this was probably untrue, and so they walked together, and a butterfly went past, and Nabokov says, "What's that?" And Downey was able to name it, and then another, "What's that?" and he was able to name it, and then another, "What's that?" and he named it. And Nabokov put his net down and said, "I'm Vladimir Nabokov," and from that point he gave him later all his notes a lot of his notes that he'd gathered at the Museum of Comparative Zoology, and passed them on to Downey, who became the leading specialist in the blues after Nabokov, and absolutely swore by Nabokov's knowledge of the blues, and he passed his knowledge on to Kurt Johnson. So it's a wonderful illustration of Nabokov's wariness about people and wanting to see that they're on the right level, and if they are, he'll give them everything.
Да, второй эпизод, он связан, если первый эпизод с убийства отца связан как бы с внутренним миром Набокова, в который мы можем проникнуть, вот, прочитав его рассказ о смерти отца, то второй эпизод, он связан с тем, как Набоков относился к людям, как его, то, что называется, характер, да, как он представал, в каком виде представал перед людьми. Этот эпизод, сейчас я буду уже от первого лица говорить тогда, этот эпизод я узнал, когда работал над энтомологическими трудами Набокова, над книгой, когда мы издавали книгу о бабочках, и я много общался с Куртом Джонсоном, энтомологом, лепидоптерологом, который тоже работал над этой книгой. Это было в 90-х годах, то есть после того уже, когда вышла биография Набокова. Поэтому до этого я не знала об этой истории. И история заключается вот в чем. Дело в том, что учителем Курта Джонсона был другой энтомолог, лепидоптеролог, то есть лепидоптеролог – это специалист именно по чешуекрылым, по бабочкам. Вот этот энтомолог Джон Дауни был учителем Курта Джонсона. И он рассказал такую историю. Джон Дауни, хотя он уже тогда был ученым, но он однажды встретился с Набоковым совершенно в других условиях. Он тогда работал водителем грузовика и ехал просто по горной дороге. Was it in Utah?
Yes, in Utah.
В штате Юта, где Набоков, как мы знаем, ловил бабочек. Да, одно из тех мест, где он занимался своими экспедициями. А в это время Джон Дауни ехал он просто был водителем, ехал в этом грузовике. И увидел Набокова с очком. Спросил его, что он делает. Набоков сказал, что он ловит бабочек. Дауни сказал, что он тоже ловит бабочек. Они начали разговаривать, шли вместе. И Набоков задавал ему вопрос, а это какая бабочка? И Дауни всегда отвечал правильно. То есть, естественно, отвечал именно научными наименованиями. А это какая бабочка? А это что? А это что? И Дауни ответил на все вопросы. И Набоков был, видимо, так этим поражен и обрадован, что впоследствии он отдал ему все свои научные записи. То есть он сказал, сначала он представился, сказал мне, я Владимир Набоков. После этого они стали общаться, стали дружить, и Набоков в итоге отдал ему все свои записи, которые он вел за годы своей работы в Гарвардском зоологическом музее, где он руководил отделом чешуекрылых. То есть отдал ему все свои записи по голубянкам, по тому классу бабочек, которым он занимался. И впоследствии Джон Дауни стал ведущим специалистом по голубянкам, то есть благодаря тому, что Набоков с ним поделился своими знаниями. Это говорит о том, насколько это очень характерно для Набокова поступок. То есть он человека всегда долго проверял, насколько человек заслуживает доверия, именно как ученый или, скажем, там, если в каком-то другом деле. И если он действительно оказывался, так сказать, заслуживающим уважения, даже не доверия, скорее уважения, да, доверия и уважения вот в своем деле, в своей работе, тогда он очень, становился очень щедрым, готов был делиться, и вот в данном случае действительно, то есть благодаря ему Джон Дауни стал очень известным ученым. А впоследствии он передал свои знания и все это наследие передал Курту Джонсону, который потом участвовал в написании книги о бабочках Набокова. Полина?
Okay.
Yeah. I should ask, say one more thing about that. So that didn't appear in the biography, but it is the first episode that comes up in Stalking Nabokov, which is about to come out in Russian.
Да, я должен добавить, что этот эпизод, хотя он не вошел в биографию, потому что я узнала о нем позже, но с него начинается книга «По следам Набокова», как раз о которой мы вчера говорили, которая очень скоро выйдет по-русски в издательстве «Симпозиум». И вот эта книга в оригинале называется «Stalking Nabokov», да, по-русски будет называться «По следам Набокова». Так что скоро ее все, как те, кто вчера нас слушал, знают, что она очень скоро уже появится по-русски, можно будет ее прочитать.
That's the book we can't wait to be published and to have it in our libraries. Okay, so that was all the questions that were sent previously. Dear colleagues, maybe the last chance if you have one question. If not, then probably, Brian, I would like to thank you. It was an incredible honor for us, and that was so interesting to listen to you. And thank you very much for answering all that questions, though there were quite many of them. Дорогие коллеги, дорогие слушатели, большое спасибо за то, что... Ага, у нас все-таки есть один вопрос, кажется, еще. Михаил Борисович. Одну секундочку, я включу звук. Нет, Михаил Борисович, вам нужно включить звук. Так, давайте еще раз попробуем. Вот так вот.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Brian, hello. What a pleasure to see you after so many years. Yes, hello. Since you were asked a rather private question about Vera, can I ask you another difficult question that's about Olga? Yesterday I spoke about my memories about Elena Vladimirovna, the sister with whom we were friends, and we had a difficult episode when I, without announcing it to her, I went to Prague, just went to Prague, and Tolstoy advised me to see the family, Kevich. We had a very good relationship with him. And Elena Vladimirovna was very cross with me that I didn't tell her about going to Prague, because Olga was a difficult story. She was not alive, but it was a kind of taboo. And since there were various rumors and they hated the publication of Losky about her, do you have perhaps more information about her behavior under the German. Since many years have passed.
No, I don't, I'm afraid. I knew how tense the relationships were between Vladimir and Olga, but I didn't know, no, I really didn't go into the details about that. I mean,
maybe I better not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, it would have required a lot of hard research, and it was something that was really quite peripheral to my task, which was really enormous. So,
thank you.
Вопрос надо перевести, да? Надо? Ага.
Не обязательно.
Нет, ну нет, нас все-таки, я думаю, надо, потому что все-таки нас... Мы все переводим, да, чтобы все могли нас слушать. Поэтому вопрос был об Ольге Набоковой. То есть мы немножко возвращаемся, если помните, те, кто нас слушал вчера, к вчерашнему дню и к нашей, даже некоторым такого, нашей дискуссии как раз с Михаилом Борисовичем на эту тему. Вопрос об Ольге. Действительно, Ольга была, там, как известно, отношения между Владимиром и Ольгой были очень такими, как бы их практически не было, хотя он ей помогал. Они не общались. И что, знает ли Брайан что-то об Ольге, почему, собственно, семья так к ней, как бы, эти отношения с другими членами семьи были довольно плохие. Ответ Брайана – нет, он не знает ничего, как бы, никаких подробностей не знает, потому что Ольга, ее жизнь не была в центре его внимания. Она для того, чтобы для написания биографии Набокова, она не была важна, поэтому он никогда не занимался углубленным изучением ее биографии, ее жизни. Это потребовало бы очень большой работы, очень большого исследования. А работы и так было, материала и так было столько, что на это уже, конечно, действительно на эту вот такую линию совершенно не очень важную, далеко не центральную, уже просто не оставалось, конечно, ни времени, ни, видимо, ни просто ресурсов.
And can I just add one more thing for Misha? In a way, Nabokov's relationships with his brother Sergei were also strained, but it was a much closer relationship, nevertheless, than his relationship with Olga. And I could have done more to find out, perhaps, at that time. I don't know, maybe it wasn't until later that the material became available about the circumstances of Sergei's death, for instance. But since I mentioned Dieter Zimmer earlier, Dieter did pursue that question, and I think he must have spent a couple of months at least working on finding out the details of Sergei's appalling death in a concentration camp. So, you know, it might be possible to do this, but I didn't have the kind of time it would have needed to devote to such a peripheral, for Nabokov, matter.
Я сейчас опять-таки это с первого лица, как Брайан. Я также не занимался достаточно в то время, во время написания биографии, историей отношений Набокова с братом Сергеем. Хотя это было, конечно, более важно, и отношения действительно были тоже сложные, но просто не было на все времени, невозможно было успеть все, поэтому и здесь, Brian, let me guess, yesterday, you of course you couldn't listen to us because of the time zone, but we spoke about it yesterday because I even changed my paper because of when I learned of Dieter's death. I changed my topic and I decided to add something to his research on Sergei, and I told everybody about his website, which is fantastic, and his paper on Sergei's death. So I added something because there are some more details that I found in letters written at that time, but I'll give you a more detailed account.
Okay, good.
Так что, да, это получается, я просто сейчас еще раз говорю, что это, к сожалению, из-за разницы во времени Брайан не может, естественно, смотреть наши секции, да, когда мы говорим наши доклады, потому что просто невозможно все совместить. Новая Зеландия это 9 часов плюс, да, не минус, как вами, а плюс. Поэтому тут просто мы, к сожалению, все в разных странах, и мы не можем все вместе в одно время друг друга слушать. Поэтому те, кто нас слушал, помнят, что как раз вчера мы тоже об этом говорили. Вот. Но вот Брайан говорит о том, что тогда во время написания биографии, эта история тоже полностью в таких деталях не вошла, и очень хорошо, что вот теперь Дитер Циммер на своем сайте поместил вот эту замечательную, огромную, очень интересную, подробную, очень точно документированную, без всяких мифов, статью о последних годах жизни и гибели Сергея Набокова.
Большое спасибо. Я думаю, что на этом мы все-таки, пожалуй, будем завершать нашу встречу. Уважаемые слушатели, Татьяна Олеговна. Да, вас слышно.
Пока мы не отключились, я бы хотела просто выразить огромную благодарность переводчикам текста. Это Геннадий Креймер и Александра Глебовская, которая сейчас участвует с нами здесь, вы можете ее видеть. Спасибо им огромное за потрясающую работу, быстрый и просто идеальный перевод. Большое спасибо.
Да, и по поводу перевода огромное спасибо переводчикам. Я также хотела сказать, что сейчас перевод выступления можно найти на сайте нашей конференции. После завершения видео, после того, как закончится у нас трансляция, оно также появится в комментариях, а чуть-чуть позднее будет опубликована расшифровка уже всей нашей встречи целиком. И еще раз большое спасибо всем, кто принимал участие, задавал вопросы, всем, кто нас слушал. И мы встречаемся с вами уже практически через 2 часа в 16:00 на последнем заседании нашей конференции. Еще раз большое спасибо и до встречи.